You're listening to the In Search SEO podcast by Rank Ranger.
That's right. You are listening to the In Search SEO podcast, the podcast that paints the town red with succulent search marketing insights. We are banging out the beats this week with SEO's own DJ. Lily Ray is here and she's spitting out depth into Google's core updates. That was corny. Okay, we're hitting on the relationship between the core updates and EAT because there is one. Also, are the core updates actually effective? And how should you approach Google's massive updates? But first, we're going to get real with what it means to write authoritative content, which kind of makes sense because that's what we're going to be talking about with Lily Ray in terms of the updates, but we're going to get into what that actually looks like when you're writing that content. I am your host, Mordy Oberstein, and I am joined by Sapir Carabello.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you, Mordy?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah.
Did you notice I left I am joined by the dazzling, the magnificent, the whatever. I just called you Sapir.
To be honest, I don't listen to you anymore, so I kind of don't pay attention to what you say.
No, that's such nonsense. Of course you pay attention to me. It's so silly. I know, and I was about to apologize. So, you know what? I was going to say I apologize for calling you an over-microwaved baked potato.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That was too harsh, I think.
What?
I think that was too harsh. I think you're just a microwave potato, not an over-microwave.
I accept your apology.
Oh, okay.
I accept your apology.
Thank you. We do appreciate
you're welcome.
you and your...
What?
I do appreciate you and your dry sense of humor.
My sense of humor is not dry.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sophisticated.
It's just non-existent. Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. So, yeah, that's great. Life is good?
Life's okay.
All right. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, again, nothing dry there. Anyway, do not forget, we put out a new episode of the In Search SEO podcast each and every Tuesday. You can find it on Stitcher. You can find it on SoundCloud. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it on wherever great podcasts are found. Of course, you may and should subscribe on iTunes. And, of course, you can find it on the Rank Ranger blog. Also, plugging away at Rank Ranger's advanced rank tracking options. See how visible your results really are, which search features are giving you a hard time, which perhaps taking away your visibility. With our absolute visibility metric, it's rank tracking by pixel without all of the problems of rank tracking by pixel, which means you get to understand how the search features that appear below your URL are interfering with your visibility, how the search features to the right of the organic results are interfering with your visibility, and how your appearance above or below the fold may or may not be helping you with your visibility. It's a true visibility score. Check it out at rankranger.com. Sign up for a 14-day free trial and check it out yourself. Okay, So great show for you again today. Lily Ray is here, going to talk about algorithm chasing and all of the great things that are part of the core updates, or maybe some of the not so great things that are part of the core updates. But before that, and since we're going to be talking about creating authoritative content in terms of the algorithm, I want to talk to you about, because I've been talking a lot about content. I'm on a content kick lately.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm very much on a content kick.
Right.
No,
lately.
you know what it is? I kind of realized, hey, I write a lot of content. I should probably talk about content a lot, because I think I know more than I give myself credit for.
Okay.
That, take that or leave that.
You definitely give yourself credit, though.
I do not give myself enough credit. That is actually not true. I'm a masochistic personality, and I put myself down all the time.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so before we get to...
Guru. What did we call you last podcast? Something guru?
I don't know, but hey, I'll take it.
Okay.
So before we get to Lily Ray, I want to go into creating authoritative content, what that actually means in terms of writing it, because this is where SEO gets real.
Verifying.
So I've talked about the authoritative content profile a lot on various podcasts, including this one, conferences and on webinars and many blog posts. I've talked a lot about the content profile. Okay.
Wait, rewind. Content profile?
That's fancy talk for saying making your site overall, their content overall, have an identity, because identity breeds authority. And we could go down that whole wormhole. But I'm going to do something today that I hate doing.
Let me guess. Being positive for a change?
No, I will not be positive today. That is not going to happen. That's like
okay.
You will never get me to have a positive outlook on anything.
Okay, noted.
It's not. It's It's like that's like trying to move the sun. It's just
right. Okay.
You'll burn up trying to do it. No, I'm going to try to be more practical. Because I want to go through how you can think of creating a specific piece of content, like not your overall content strategy, which I've talked about before, as I mentioned, but a very specific piece of content, how to make that be authoritative. Because it's funny, okay? It's like when we talk about EAT and creating authoritative content as SEOs, which we'll get into with Lily Ray in a few moments about in terms of the algorithm itself. We view it as like a very novel thing. Like, whoa, EAT, Google, incredibly novel. Okay, but any idiot doing their graduate work or any serious undergrad, not the people going to Indiana State University, which is a party school. Okay, so you guys are just doing body shots all day long. You don't know what it means to create authoritative content. But most people doing their collegiate career understand what it means to create something authoritative. It's not rocket science, folks. But for SEOs, it's very hard for us. Very hard for us.
What are you talking about? Like, please tell us why it's so hard for us.
I will tell you why it's so hard for us. Yes, good.
Please.
Very good. That I will, because I wasn't going to do that if you didn't ask me to. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, Mordy.
It's hard for us because, well, it's for a few reasons. One is it's a mindset. It's an authority mindset. And adjusting to that mindset is going to be hard, because adjusting to any mindset is going to be hard. But particularly it's hard for SEOs, I think, personally speaking, because one, you still have to think of Google as a simple machine to a certain extent, right? Google, as much as we want to give it credit for being very, very, very complex, sometimes at some points you're going to have to treat it very simply, right? You're going to have your H2 structured well, and you're probably going to want to use a keyword or a related keyword in your title. Like, you are going to have to treat Google very simply, because those things do work and those things are still important. So it's hard to create that authority mindset and have that as being so important while you're still like treating Google as a very basic thing, which is justifiable in a good amount of cases. You know what I mean?
Okay. Mhm.
Mhm. You're like looking at me like I'm some sort of cult leader. You want some Kool-Aid?
Yeah, you speak like some cult leader.
I do.
So.
I do. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. The comet is coming. Let's go drink some Kool-Aid. You don't understand what I'm talking about, Sapir, but you should Google that.
No
Okay.
idea.
But again, Mordy, what the F are you talking about? Beam back down to earth, and let's get practical, because I promised I would do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right, I forgot.
Right, forgot. It's very hard for me. It is. You have to hear novel concept. You ready for it? You have to write for the user. It all starts with writing for the user. That's where it starts. Yep.
No way. Are you serious?
Yes.
Wow, you're not stating the obvious at all with this one, huh?
Yep. That's right. I know it sounds simple.
Revolutionary.
No, okay,
right.
okay. But I mean it. And I don't think people appreciate this. I don't think you're right. There's nothing I'm saying that's novel in the content per se, but the appreciation of it is what I'm trying to get across. If you don't write for the user, your content will end up looking and sounding different. Okay, so whatever metric you're trying to chase, you need to throw all of them out of the freaking window. Do not think about metrics. You need to think about one thing, and that's helping the user. And by the way, you can approach this in two different ways, and this is what we're going to get into. You could write something, one, because you want to help people out. Or two, You could write something because you love that topic. You would really want, it's a natural human urge to share something that you find interesting and novel and whatever it is. So if you have an interesting or a novel take on something and want to share that, that's another way that you can write for the user. And I know one is more direct in terms of the user, and one is more just like a love affair with knowledge, but both produce deep and helpful content that's aimed at ultimately, one's direct, one's indirect, but helping users, teaching people something. And in both cases, your drive to explore or to share or to help is the prime mover and not some metric like traffic or clicks or whatever it is.
But wait a minute, like...
I'm waiting.
But don't you think we still need to take into consideration traffic and clicks? I just don't understand why you're not recommending writing the content with that in mind, because that's the end goal eventually. Like, I know that you don't think it's the end goal, but let's be real, it is the end goal. And writing what you love or because you want to help people sounds very nice and all, but is it enough?
Ooh. My hot take? Yes. Like
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
I know people are going to disagree with me about this. I think they're getting very upset what I'm saying.
Uh-huh.
Okay, because and the overall point is because if you really want to write for the user, you can't fake it. Like I will say this, okay, 100% of all of the content you read that's a little bit too thin, a little bit too fluffy, a little bit too whatever, is because you're not thinking about the user. 100% of it, because or you just suck as a writer. But let's leave that out. Let's assume you know how to write decently. All things being equal, it's 100% of the time the reason why that content is not good is because you're not thinking about the user. And I will say this, like, I personally think you should not think about that kind of stuff, right? If you're in a certain niche or a certain industry and you have a novel take on something, that's reason enough to write it. Obviously, yes. Okay. Secondarily, you do want to think like, is it something people are actually interested in? Does anyone really want to hear me talk about this? So yeah, okay, but that's not thinking about traffic or clicks. I think like why waste my time writing about something I find interesting that no one else will. Mm-hmm. That's okay. That's like you wouldn't talk about something to your friend if you found it interesting and they didn't. So yeah, you want to make sure that's something people are interested in general, right? But the main forget the metrics. If you have a novel take on something, or you think something is really helpful, let's say you think something is really helpful to people, and let's assume that you're on target for the moment. So people will search for that. People will be interested in that. People will share that. People will click on that. People will share that with other people. Right? So you want to use. My
question is, should you put it as the main?
No, definitely not. No, absolutely not. 100% not.
Okay.
It should be, this is helpful to I think this is something that's helpful to people and I want to share it. Now you might want to use keyword research to qualify that, right? Okay, how do I really get in? What are some of the subtopics that I should probably get into that might help people if I'm going to talk about this topic? Right, if you're doing, I have a topic I want to talk about, it's going to be helpful. Okay, so what are some subtopics, or what are some questions people have that they want to have answered, or how popular is this topic really? It's like I'm just wasting my time here. But that's just qualifying your initial idea to help people or write about something that you find interesting. Right, you're just qualifying at that point. That's not why you're writing. You want to use metrics to qualify. You don't want to use metrics to decide to write or not to write. And I know people will disagree with me on that. Right, you need to write content. So if you write about things that are interesting to you for your industry, or that you think will be helpful to people in your industry, and you're not living on Mars, like you have a good sense of things, and you do this for 2 years, 3 years, like you really play the long game with this, you will increase your traffic. You will increase your clicks. And even if you did no keyword research or anything around this, that will happen, all things being equal. Like, unless you're just like totally disconnected from reality, that will happen. Right. And the reason why I'm saying is like, it's a mindset. And again, if you fake this, people will read, this, you read a piece of content. And you're like, all right, this is like, they don't really care about what they're writing about. It's so easy to see you cannot fake this.
But, I'm not sure about this, because then you're implying that all the top ranking pages are genuine, like have content that comes from a genuine place.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the case.
That's a good question. That's a good point. No, I'm not talking about ranking. Yes, okay. There might be pages that rank well that someone wrote because, hey, they're like, I'm just going to get traffic. I'm talking about creating authoritative content that will ultimately rank well overall, long term, not just this piece, but in general, the content that you produce. And how you can be authoritative. And that's not just about ranking, by the way. That's about how people associate to your brand, right? I know I'm not going to name this person. They rank very well for a lot of queries, and they are total spammers within the SEO industry. Total spammer. Right. I don't trust their content. I, in fact, ignore it every time I see it, even though it ranks well.
Right.
I'm talking about the long game here. If you want to talk about, ranking for this particular query and getting that traffic, okay, yeah, you could write whatever you want to write and you'll probably rank for it.
Right.
Okay, but first off, ranking doesn't lead to conversions necessarily. Like, you write a piece of garbage and people see right through it, so you rank well, they click, but do you convert?
Mm-hmm.
It's not about ranking, it's about converting.
Gotcha.
Right? So the problem is that it's a mindset. And this mindset of creating hyper-authoritative content, which comes from why you're writing it, your whole purpose, it's the single most important thing you can do at the practical level. Because it allows you to problem solve.
Right.
It allows you to produce content that is based on problem solving. Is that? Do you have any idea what I'm talking about? I'm probably not being clear.
Yeah, you mean basically like detecting a need and then offering a solution to it.
Yeah, in general.
Right.
Yeah, in terms of why you're writing this topic. But what I mean by having a mindset, an authoritative based mindset that leads to problem solving, I mean that leads to problem solving in the writing itself. Okay, let me just run this through better, because then I don't think I'm making sense. I'm being too abstract, which is my problem. Okay, so let's say you're creating content because you love talking about this topic, or you have something really interesting to say about it. So what will you naturally do? You will explore all the nooks, all the crannies of that topic. You'll make sure you don't say something that can be taken the wrong way. You'll explain how something that might be taken the wrong way should not be. You'll create nuanced content. Nuanced content is authoritative. And why will that happen here? Because you're worried about being clear. And that anxiety, when you're writing, that's a good thing. I have it all the time. Like, okay, am I being clear here? Like, I have it right now. So I stopped, I refreshed, and I walked it through for you.
Right.
And that's based on I have an interesting outlook. I think it's an interesting outlook. And I have an anxiety of like making sure I'm getting it across clearly. So now I gave you an example, right? I walked it through. Mm-hmm. Having that mindset of trying to help people or to share something, that authoritative mindset naturally leads you to create nuanced content, which is therefore authoritative. Okay, well, let's run it through the second way. You legit want to help people. You'll do the same thing, right? You're going to worry, is what I'm saying going to be possibly misconstrued? Or if I'm advising the reader to do X, what problems will the reader face if they actually follow my advice? And how could they deal with those problems? How could they avoid those problems? What might be hard about following the advice or the idea that I'm offering, right? How can the readers avoid that or deal with that? Again, you're going to create very nuanced, deep content that's very, very authoritative. Right. Why? Because you're concerned about the user. That empathetic mindset when you create content is what allows you to be authoritative, because it naturally produces problem solving, meaning you're predicting the problem the user's going to face when they're reading your content and adjusting that content accordingly. Does that make more sense?
I agree with you, but your second point still sounds like a Disney moral of the story type of thing.
I have never been compared to Disney ever before, and I will make sure that never happens again. Okay, because I'm going to boil it down to how can you create authoritative content? It's a matter of mindset, and only that mindset. And here's the kicker, right in the nuts. There's for your Disney comparison. You have to have pride and passion about what you're writing about. Otherwise, you won't produce that authoritative content. That mindset of creating content for the user comes from having pride and passion in your work. And everyone listening who loves throwing out tons of content to get rankings and traffic just let out a collective, oh, shit.
Oh, God. You just had to ruin it, right? It was like so beautiful and touching, and then
That's it.
great.
By the way,
Great job, Mordy.
absolutely. Thank you so much. Best advice, by the way. Okay. And you can forget validating your content by having a doctor review it. I mean, you should do that. If you do medical content, you should definitely do that. I'm not saying don't. But what you should really be doing is you should be passionate about the topic that your site deals with and write accordingly. And that will naturally, that having that passion, having that mindset of trying to help people or to be passionate about that topic will naturally produce nuanced content. Nuanced content is authoritative content. And if you don't have that, then get someone else to write it. Like this idea that anyone can write anything because they're a good writer, that needs to die a horrible, horrible death. Like decapitation. Your content needs to be written by someone who is passionate about the topics that your site deals with. And if you hire one of these content producing machines, I would make sure that they have people who specialize in your topic, or you will end up getting some piece of nothing that's been done 100 times before that has no voice of its own. So that's a hot take right there. And that's going to tick a lot of people off. And I just said it. And now we're ready to get into EAT and the algo and the core updates, because now you know what it means to actually write authoritative content. So here's the beat-bopping, tune-turning SEO megastar, Lily Ray.
Here comes another search marketing expert. It's time for an in-search interview.
You're listening to another In-Search SEO podcast interview. So unless you're new to SEO or you've been living in a cave in Afghanistan, you've seen her here, you've seen her there, you've seen her everywhere. Now she's actually here. She's an author, speaker, and a record spinner. Whether she's kicking out some SEO insights or some funky beats, she's the SEO director at Path Interactive. She's the one, the only Lily Ray. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. That was a great intro.
It's all my guests say that. I tell them the same thing. Like this is the pinnacle of the interview.
That's the best part.
This is the best part, right?
It's all downhill from there.
It's just literally all downhill. It's all downhill from here. So we actually have a lot in common. We talk about a lot of the same SEO stuff. You're from New York. I'm from New York. You're Jewish. I'm Jewish. You have a six-pack. And underneath a heavy layer of fat, so do I.
Totally. We all do. Somewhere in there, right?
Somewhere in there. I also have a six-pack in the fridge. So I have two six-packs. Wait, so I got to ask, like, how do you have like the mental and physical energy to do SEO all day long and then like do a DJ session to like 3 o'clock in the morning?
I mean, I think it kind of just like stems from the love of what you do, you know? Like, SEO doesn't feel like work to me. It just feels like fun.
Right.
And then DJing, especially here from home, it's just fun. Like, it's totally stress-free to play from home. So it's just having fun, you know?
So where does the cocaine fit into that?
I'm not going to answer that.
Okay.
No,
just ask.
I mean, no, I think also, like, staying healthy is really, really helpful. So, like, when I was a kid, I used to get sick a lot, like everybody. But, like, I learned at some point when I was, like, 16 or 17, like, I learned how to just, like, love vegetables and healthy eating and going to the gym and, like, being really physical. And I've been in love with it ever since. And
that's great.
I don't get sick anymore. I haven't been sick in years.
Really?
It's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I get strep every year.
Yeah, I mean, I used to as a kid, and then, like, I cut out dairy, like...
Really? So you're, like, super healthy. Do you eat meat?
I do eat meat, yeah, but I try to keep it, like, reasonable, yeah.
Right, it's like 5 or 6 hamburgers. I get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally reasonable.
Supersize
me.
Yeah, exactly.
It's reasonable by American standards. Okay, so we're going to talk about core updates. I love talking about core updates. It's actually, believe it or not, this is the first interview we've done where we talk just about core updates, basically.
That's awesome.
Which is bizarre, because like I love talking about core updates. So just to sort of maybe catch everybody up, what's a core update?
So a core update is like when Google unveils a new set of algorithms, I guess, that they've been working on over the past few months and you know, collecting data from the experiments that they do with search quality raters and refining things, and then they roll these out several times a year, I guess maybe 4 or 5 times a year. And as of the last few years, they've been like pretty mysterious compared to prior years. I think like in the past, it used to be things like, hey, we rolled out a core update, and these are, like, the things that we looked at. Like, with Panda, we looked at these kind of like 25 questions you can ask about the quality of your content. Or with Penguin, look at the quality of your links, or if you've been violating our link guidelines. But with the past few years, like you and I talk about, it seems like the biggest emphasis for Google's been
Yeah, it's really
about the
interesting.
core updates. It's like EAT and content quality.
So yeah, I want to jump into that, but for a second, I think people forget. You're right. Like, core updates are not a new thing. They've been going on for forever. But ever since the Medic update in August 2018, so bad with dates, it's almost been like a different set of core updates.
Yeah, I agree. And like, they have this one document. Google has this one document they always link to every time.
Right.
At least since last year. Where it's like, just keep reading this article over and over to see what's going on.
What do you think of that article?
I think it's great. It links to my company.
Oh, that's right. I think it's great.
I cannot complain about that article at all.
Love it. Best article ever.
Exactly. Keep sharing it, Google.
Let's pretend you were not linked in there for just a second.
Okay.
What would you think of that? And hypothetically speaking, of that document.
No, I think it's a helpful document for sure. I mean, the part before it links to SEOs, which is like the biggest controversy ever.
Yeah, that was so weird.
There's a lot of different things to consider in there. So it's very similar to the article that I was referencing before, which was Amiss Singhal's like 22 or 21 questions to ask yourself if you've been hit by the Panda update. It's actually really similar. So it's like, it's not like Google's necessarily recommending new things or asking users to or webmasters to consider that new of concepts, but it does make you kind of have to think from an objective perspective about your content and whether it's actually valuable. So it's worth reading that article for sure.
Yeah, I would just definitely read it. But at the same time, okay, I understand you should write good content. Are you relevant? And by the way, that is true. I know people get upset about this. There are certain moments where intent shifts and you're just not relevant anymore. That's just a reality. Is it just about writing good content, assuming that you're still relevant?
No.
Right.
No. Not at all. I mean,
softball question.
Yeah. The other portion of the article gets into EAT, which is my dog and pony show that I've been talking about for 2 years now, ad nauseum.
Right.
But I think it's really important.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's really important. And it's also a lot of the SEO industry doesn't even necessarily believe it's a thing that you should focus on.
So that's a funny thing about this. I still get into arguments, sort of, kind of. Try not to argue on Twitter. It's a stupid thing to do.
Yeah.
But I still get to think, it's not, Gary said that EAT is just links.
Did he actually say that?
I think he actually did say something like that. I always wonder with Gary if he said something like that just to screw with us.
Right.
Because you have
and then
Danny
we,
Sullivan saying,
overanalyze it. Yeah.
Right, of course. And he knows. Gary's a master manipulator.
Yeah. No, I know. And we take one sentence that one of them says, and then we all cite it a million times. And we read too much into it.
Right. That's why I call John Mueller the Jesus of SEO.
Yeah, I don't think it's true. For what it's worth, I spent 3 hours with John Mueller when I was in England last year, speaking at Brighton SEO, and we talked about EAT pretty much for those 3 hours. He can't say that much about it, which I thought was really interesting.
That is interesting.
There's a certain questions that I asked him, and he's just I don't know, can't really talk about that.
Why is that?
I have a lot of theories about that. That's actually what my talk from the Search Engine Journal Summit yesterday was about. A lot of my speculation about why this whole thing is such a mystery. But I don't think it's all linked. I don't think that's true at all. It's definitely on-page components. And I think the algorithm updates are the result of them not fully understanding how to factor in on-page elements into the algorithm from an EAT standpoint.
That's an interesting point. That is because you do have Danny Sullivan saying the total opposite of what Gary said, right? He said something a bunch of times he said this. We try to simulate what a person would consider expertise, authoritative, or trustworthy content through various signals together, which is the total opposite of saying it's just links.
Exactly.
Right. Or there was another one where John Mueller said, we take a look at a vertical of content, let's say health content, and we can see what's really super authoritative, what's really great content, and compare other content to it.
Right.
So there's a lot there.
So it's a really complex task. Like, if what they're saying about EAT is true, and what they say in the search quality guidelines is true, like, hey, we know that this is evidence-based, or we know that this doesn't contradict, scientific and medical consensus about this topic. To try to emulate that with algorithms is, like, insane. That's so difficult to do, and that's why I think that we keep seeing these algorithm updates that are so, like, volatile, because they're not getting it right every time.
So you think they're trying? You think, because that's part of the whole debate, right? Is Google doing what it's saying it's asking for in the quality weighter guidelines algorithmically?
I think it's trying to.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
That would be the whole point, right? Like that. Why wouldn't you try to do that?
That's exactly how they say they use it. Like,
right.
Okay, we're taking this data and we're going to try to mimic what, users and humans are telling us about our results in the algorithm.
Well, it's just links, though.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a daunting task, and I think that there's some interesting cases where, like, especially with this last May 4 update, where I'm like, I think you got it wrong again. Sorry.
Yeah, they got a lot of flack.
They should have. It's a bad update. I'm sorry.
What have you seen? Because it's an interesting update. Like, I thought originally I was hearing from a bunch of people like, yeah, this is great. This has, like, really helped us out. And at the same time, like, it's one of those, it was a little bit weird because usually an update, I know they say it takes a week to roll out, but in this last one, there was a lot of changes still happening a week later, more so, I think, than previous updates. And that's a very anecdotal, I did not formally look into this. Anecdotally, I'm saying that. And in the end, like, I turn around, like, everyone's ticked off.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it take, like, this update, I've seen, like, some evidence that it took 2 or 3 weeks to roll out, for sure. Like, I saw changes take place on, like, May 17th, when the update itself was announced on May 4th.
Like, big stuff, like, a lot of changes happening.
Yeah. But the biggest issue that I had with this update was that, number one, sites that I thought were doing a good job, and that, like, for the past couple of years have seen, like, gains with each update and are clearly investing in, like, SEO and EAT and all this stuff. Some of them saw declines, which is like, whoa, like, big declines.
Interesting.
And then conversely, some sites that I've looked at as, like, oh, this is definitely a problem website, definitely, like, somewhat deceptive, or maybe the website hasn't been updated at all in a very long time, which is maybe okay. But, like, they came out of nowhere and started to rank really well.
Like, not updated since 1996.
Literally, I've seen that.
Yeah, you showed me that example. That was amazing.
Yeah, which is like, okay, maybe it's an authoritative publication and this article from 1996 happens to be super relevant, like, maybe. But really?
Just so the audience understands, there was literally an image, like the imagery were like stick figures.
Yeah.
Literally.
Before graphic design existed. That's
right.
when they wrote that
That's
article.
how old the page is. And it was a health site.
It's like, yeah, it's mind-boggling. Although, like, to be fair, it's an authoritative website. Sure.
Okay, fine, fair. But still, you would think that health has changed over the past 20 years?
Just a bit, yeah.
A bit? Somehow? Don't know. But you also had another great example. There was that something to do with old age and some organization. I totally forgot the example off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was what?
It's called aging.com. I'll just say it. I have nothing to lose. But it's, it's one of these exact match domain websites where it's like a mystery who the brand is.
Right.
And in this case, it actually has a name that sounds very, very similar to an actual organization, like a, 501c3 nonprofit organization that helps elderly people. This exact match domain has a quote unquote, like, brand name that sounds very similar to that one. But when you look up the brand name, there's, like, no reputation information out there at all. When you look up the nonprofit, it's, like, totally well-known, established, tons of information. So it's like, what's going on here? And that exact match domain saw a big increase with this update. And I always thought, like, this thing's going to get killed off. Because the last few updates it saw a decline.
It was very weird. Like, the about page for that website, entirely sketchy. It's a joke. It's a joke. It really is.
It's obviously an SEO bought the exact match domain and they're using the site for one reason or another, and, like, that's, it's stuff like that bothers me, because it's like, it just makes us, with our clients, like, how are we supposed to explain that stuff?
Yeah, that's tough. That's a hard position. How do you do that?
I just say it's a long ride, so hopefully we see a correction in the future.
Yeah, well, listen, Google is constantly updating, so sooner or later you'll win.
Exactly.
I thought that. See, I really didn't expect Google to put out an update. Like, so I think that there's usually a March update. In March 2018 and March 2019, there was a core update. I think, all right, they're not going to do the March update that they usually do because of COVID-19, and I didn't expect them to do anything for like a few months. And I'm a little bit surprised they did something in May, and I think me personally, I think they botched it. I think that there are a lot of COVID SERPs that have sort of stabilized a little bit. Like you can see, like the rankings are all over the place. At a certain point, with certain, there's a bunch of unconfirmed updates throughout April. Google sort of figured it out. But even to this date, a lot of the main COVID SERPs, COVID-19 vaccine or all, it's a giant mess. And
what do you mean by mess?
I mean, it's like they're still trying to figure it out. Like this site goes up, that it's almost like a news result, where like each day there's like a major shifting in the rankings, and it's not like okay, the topic matter changed so drastically from one day to the next that this site now is up and that site's now down. It doesn't seem to like there's like any rhyme or reason that I can see to it.
Yeah, that's been my biggest issue with this update. Like the last 3 or 4 core updates, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense that this website's been making these types of changes and they're seeing growth and they're seeing declines. But this one's just like, what? There's like no consistency. There's, I was trying to make sense of some patterns that I was seeing, but then I would see other things that completely contradicted that. So it's been a really tough one to analyze.
Yes, that's what I think. I think that they pushed it too soon. Like I think that COVID-19 changes everything for them. It sort of sends like a shockwave throughout the system because it reaches so many different things, and it's almost as if their AI needs to say, "Well, are we sure we really understand any of this now?" I'm being a little bit hyperbolic about it, but that's sort of what's happening. And they push out this update when they really haven't figured everything out, and they're still trying to figure it out, and it's been a giant disaster, I think.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I was on like a webinar with Cindy Crum and a couple people last week, and we were talking about the same thing, where it's like, did they push this out because they were trying to kind of like change the game a little bit because of coronavirus and because search trends changed so much and like people have different needs now? But I actually did a presentation right before the core update about coronavirus and the impact it was having on the search results, and Google's algorithms seemed to be mostly like self-regulating at that point. Like there was a lot of changes in the search results based on intent, and like for example, like a lot of things that offer online services started to rank really well for keywords that didn't have the word online in them because the search algorithms picked up on the fact that people needed the thing to be online. So like online classes, for example. So it's interesting that they rolled out the core update because it was almost like taking care of itself a little bit.
A little bit. I think at the same time, though, there's a lot that was. I definitely saw cases of that for sure. Like I saw something like forgot the exact keyword. It was like an attraction keyword, like things to do in New York or things to do in London. And Google was throwing a page in from the New York Times, I think, that had nothing to do with the location, but things to do at home during quarantine.
Right.
Which is that's brilliant.
Yeah, that's the thing is like everything became about coronavirus. Like even if you typed like a state name in like late March, instead of the stuff that's like visit Kansas.com or whatever, it was like how many coronavirus cases are there in Kansas?
No, I don't think people really realize how far it goes. Like if you think about anything, right? I don't know, shipping or cleaning or things to do or anything with commerce, it impacts everything.
Exactly. And it's actually been changing the course of what we're doing with our clients for sure. Like we had to have some clients where we just like completely paused the strategy and said, you need to go into your content right now and update all of it. Because if you're ranking number 1 for a page about like, 10 ways to make money in 2020 and like, I had a client that was like, this is so bad. It was like, you're a teenager, you can like bring food or deliver groceries to elderly people. I was like, please don't put that in 2020. Like it's not safe.
Unless the post is 10 ways to kill grandma.
Exactly.
Right.
I was like, can we just change that one? It's kind of dangerous.
Terrible. Yeah, that's a good one. That's the best example I think I've ever heard so far.
There's so much like that though. Like if you go through your content, all of it's different. Like if you wrote an article about best stocks to invest in 2020 and you wrote that in January, it's different now.
Right.
It's completely different now.
So do you think, okay, so we have the May 2020 core update, kind of a mess. Google's going to assuming that they're paying attention, which I assume they are, they realize also that it's a mess, and they're going to have to fix something. Question is the correction going to be worse than the original?
Well, one thing that was really interesting about this update was, did you see what happened with Pinterest?
No. Oh, yeah. That's awesome. That's like everywhere.
So, like every single international TLD of Pinterest is surging.
That's right. It's unbelievable. So wait, we need to describe what's happening. So let's say you search for, I don't know, what's a good keyword? I don't know. Something with a picture.
Curvy women was the one that I...
Curvy women?
I typed curvy women, and the first, position 2, 3, 4, and 5 or whatever were all Pinterest, but they were 4 different international versions of Pinterest.
Poor Pornhub lost all their rankings.
Yeah. Did they actually?
No, I'm joking for that keyword.
No. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, Pinterest is replacing so many different queries. It's I guess you wanted pictures, but I guess you wanted pictures from 4 different versions of Pinterest.
Of course, I want to see curvy women from France, Canada, Norway.
Curvy women from Norway, good luck with that.
Right. Probably few and far between.
Yeah, not that many.
Right. Yeah, that's a mess. I mean, they're going to have to fix that. That's a mess. But in fixing it, you run the risk of overcompensating.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, my point about that was that Danny Sullivan confirmed, oh, yeah, we have a mistake on our hands. We have to fix the Pinterest thing.
They have a lot of mistakes. Yeah.
How do you fix one domain, or a set of domains?
I don't know.
What does that look like?
I have no idea. There's going to have to be something, there's some kind of input that went awry somewhere. And that's a big problem. Because how do you know what it is? They probably don't know what it is.
Yeah, I had visions. You see my presentations. I have a lot of memes and stuff.
Okay.
I had visions of a new slide for a future presentation, which was a room with 1 million levers in it, and then Danny Sullivan frantically trying to figure out which one to switch.
It's I was just talking to Dr. Pete about this. It's like that episode from The Simpsons. I'm totally outdating myself with The Simpsons, where Homer saves a nuclear power plant by pushing a random sequence of buttons that he cannot replicate again.
Totally.
Right.
That's totally Google's algorithm.
Oh, such a mess. I think it's gonna be a mess. I think they're gonna run another core update. Personal prediction. I'm a giant cynic, I know, and it's just gonna be worse than before.
Well, hopefully it's worse in a way that benefits my clients.
There you go, which is better.
That'd be nice.
With that, when you're looking at a core update, and let's say Google runs out another core update, and hopefully it's better. It'll come again soon, probably in the fall. What do you look at? Where do you start? How do you analyze it? What's your approach?
Yeah, so I work with Systrix on this. So Systrix is one of the many SEO tools, but one nice feature about it is that it collects visibility at any point in time, any day of the year.
Oh, you can. Right, I've seen this.
Yeah, so I have a sheet that I use to just plug in any domain or set of domains, and I can see their visibility on the day an update was rolled out, and then compared to a week later or a month later. And that gives me a good idea of for example, with this update, I had 550 domains that I ran through it, and I published an article about that. And I try to stick to obviously I can't analyze every site ever,
right?
The Google sheet was great, but you start to see patterns after a while. So I try to throw in a variety of different categories, topics.
Yeah, that's really cool. That article, by the way, is very interesting. The 550 URLs that you studied. Because I'm generally not a big winners and losers list person. Because I don't really understand what you get out of them. You get, here's the top 10 sites that won, top 10 sites that lost. Are these really the top 10 sites of the whole internet that won and lost? Probably not.
Of course not.
But
and it's true. You have to look at the page level, too, of course.
Right. Yeah. And people get all upset about, it's page level. Oh, all right. It's true and it's not true, by the way. It is page level, and it's also not page level, because there's a lot of domain analysis that Google's doing. But the 550 URLs or sites, that's really interesting, because there you can sort of pick out patterns.
Mm-hmm. That's the idea. And the ones that I selected are the ones that I've seen the most fluctuations in the last couple of years, and also just big players, the news category, for example. This last update really impacted a lot of news sites.
That makes a lot of sense, theoretically.
Sites. Yeah, theoretically, except for if you look at who they are, there's no patterns.
That's
I don't know.
the
Maybe
hard
I have
thing.
to dig deeper. But
It's
yeah.
really hard. I don't think people realize how hard it is to find a pattern with any update.
Right.
It's ridiculously hard. I mean, sometimes you find you dive in, and nothing's there. Sometimes you dive in, oh, right here. Here it is.
I thought the medic update was pretty clear.
Yeah.
Not like across the board, but that's actually when I started talking about EAP so much, because I had a client that was completely lacking EAP and ranking like number 1 through 5 for every medical keyword before the medic update.
Right.
And we had so much traffic. And we were just like auto-generating content. Like it was totally fun content. And we were ranking amazingly. And then the medic update happened and we lost everything. And guess who won? Healthline.
Healthline.
WebMD.
Nice.
Mayo Clinic. Medical News Today. Like all the sites. It was like, oh, they have real doctors writing their content. That's different. You know?
Right. But besides, I know that's like a very popular and very good idea. Like if you're going to, either you are an expert when you're writing it or you have it expertly reviewed, particularly pertinent for medical
Right.
pages. But beyond looking at author bios or having your content reviewed or links, what are you looking at or what do you do? How do you profile a site? Like, all right, there's an authority problem here. There's a trustworthy problem here.
Yeah, actually, like, what my team and I are doing now, which is extremely labor intensive, is we've taken the questions from Google's document about analyzing core updates. They have like a lot of different questions that they recommend using to analyze the quality of the content, and we literally just go through some of the best performing or previously best performing pieces of content, and we ask ourselves those questions. And we have it in a tool now that we use where we say, you know, is this the best piece of content on this topic? Yes or no? Or like,
Nice.
to what extent does it answer the user's question? And if you actually go through that process, you'll notice, for many sites that, you know, we work on at least, there's a lot of fluff in these articles. Or like maybe you made a statement about something that's medical in nature and you didn't back up your claim with any evidence. So almost like analyzing something the way you would if you were like in high school and reviewing a term paper, you kind of have to do that for your content.
It's very true. It's one of the things, forget May's update or in general. Overall, I've found that the updates in general, so no one like freak out if like your site got hit and you do this and then whatever. But it's gotten rid of a lot of fluff from the SERP.
Yeah.
Like my favorite site is Dr. Axe, who I love that site because it's Drake's, but it's really Dr. Axe, but you can't put a period in the URL, so it becomes Drake. Like it's very confusing.
That's so funny.
It's
I always
so
think that when I segment it.
Right. It's like, dude, did you not realize if you do Dr. Axe, but you do it in the it just becomes Drake's?
I totally read it as Drake's for the first
Yeah,
couple
me
of
too.
months.
For like Drake's, who the hell is Drake's? I'm like, oh, Dr. Axe, dummy.
So funny. He didn't really have a choice. It's not like there's capitalization. But...
That's true. Or he could have just done doctor. Like spelled out the word
true.
doctor.
Or the dash.
But that's long.
Yeah.
But yeah, like a lot of these sites where there might be some good content mixed in, but it's really there's a lot of verbal fluffage.
For sure.
I
And
think
that's one thing that we're working on with our clients. It's like, this sentence is unnecessary, and it's actually a really your money, your life page. And you have, like, I don't know who wrote it, but that person added, like, an unnecessary intro that doesn't answer the question that the page is trying to answer. So just take it all out.
Yeah. I almost think it's like almost you're seeing the beginning of the end of the age of the marketing writer within a bunch of verticals.
Totally.
Like you can't do that. You have to have someone who knows the hell they're talking about writing your content. What the hell are you thinking?
I totally agree with that.
Too bad. It's not going to change. But it's a great advantage because I don't think sites are going to change. Like, I'm not going to hire a real expert. Bob, you know how to write. You're a good writer, so write something, Bob.
Yeah, it's like fundamentally changed the content production process for many of our clients.
Yeah.
So,
which doesn't get discussed enough. Like the content end of this problem doesn't get. We always talk about EAT in terms of the SEO context and blah 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 blah. But in terms of the actual writing process, it's a whole different ballgame.
That's what I think it's the job of an SEO at this point to understand that stuff. Because like we're so used to it's so funny because like sometimes when I look at a website, I just like look at the skeleton right away. Do you have that problem? Like I don't know how technical you are.
Yeah.
But like yeah, where it's like okay, I'm looking at the canonical tags, I'm looking at the website structure, I'm looking at running at the Screaming Frog and looking at anything that I can see there. but I'm not like reading the page.
Right. And that's a problem. Right. That's a total problem.
Yeah, so I think that it's really important to be able to do both, or at least if you have an SEO team or whatever, you have people that are good at both things.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing what you see. Like, okay, I found like when you're looking at some of the updates, all right, I'll look at the update. I don't really see anything here. Then you actually look at the pages, like actually read the pages.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah. I get that now. That's why this happened. Yeah, 100%.
Totally.
So, with that, and by the way, if you don't follow Lily, you're ridiculous because she puts out so much good content around this stuff. So definitely follow her, keep track of her, and you're freaking everywhere. By the way, thank you for doing all that stuff because that can't be easy and working at the same time.
Well, thank you. Fortunately, my job supports me being everywhere. So
Good for them.
That's great. Thank you,
That's really smart. Yeah. So with that, though, before I let you leave, I have this fun little game that I do. I call it Optimize It or Disavow It. It's where I'll give you two really good options, and you're stuck choosing one good option over another good option, which is uncomfortable. Or I give you two really, really bad options, and you're stuck choosing one bad option over another bad option, and that just sucks. So this is the Lily Ray version of Optimize It or Disavow It. So it's a zero-sum world. You could say it depends. That's sort of a cop-out. But assuming it's zero-sum, if you had to do one or the other, right, when looking at a core update, would you look at things thematically? Would you perform a thematic analysis, a holistic analysis, start reading the page content like you said a few minutes ago? Or would you perform a technical analysis?
Thematic. Right now, for sure.
Why?
Obviously technical SEO obviously plays a role. But I think that it's more important what you're saying on the page these days.
More important than like page speed?
Yes.
Okay. I had to ask a stupid question. Yes, unequivocally,
but,
yes.
So, like, if the page can't be crawled, you have a problem.
Right, okay.
Like, that's a problem. But, like, I mean, assuming you don't have something super problematic, like you have, like, a broken canonical, or you're blocking something with robots you need to be able to access, like, things that are, like, severely technical problems, like, that's a problem. But, if you, I don't know, if you're, what's an example of a minor technical issue? Like, maybe not using SSL. I've seen sites ranking number one that are not using SSL right now for huge keywords.
Yeah. Cool. So, that makes a lot of sense. I personally totally agree with you. So. That makes it. That makes it. If that makes it feel any better at home, listening.
That's why I'm on your podcast.
Right. No, that is. We both agree about a lot of this stuff. We should really have another person on who doesn't agree, and then beat them up.
Oh, that'd be fun.
That'd be great.
Two against one.
Two, right? I'll get a ladder. You get a folding chair. It'll be like a cage match. Nice. All right, Lily. Thank you so much for coming on. This is awesome, and keep doing that voodoo that you do.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
And we are back to your regularly scheduled In Search SEO podcast. I should probably say something now.
We're back.
We're back from that.
Tell them what we're gonna do now, Mordy.
I'm gonna plug Lily Ray. You should check her out on Twitter, or she might stream this other places. She does Saturday night, Sunday, whatever it is. I don't know what day it is. I don't know what day it is right now. These like live. You can tune in and watch her DJ. That's pretty cool. So definitely check that out. And follow her on Twitter if you're not already. And now we're going to do the news, now that we said that.
Right.
It's time for the news. So, Sapir, could you please hit it with the news?
Some interesting announcements around smart shopping campaigns. US campaigns can now show shipping annotations. And more visual formats will be coming at some point.
Awesome. The shipping thing makes a lot of sense. That's definitely helpful.
Okay, moving on. Phew! Google is now telling Google My Business account managers when their listings are suspended.
That's amazing, right? Hey,
That's
I don't.
great.
It's like, you would kind of think that that should be like an automatic thing from time memorial. Like, hey, you've been suspended. Here's a notification about it. But no. But hey, at least it's happening now.
Right.
Right.
Better late than never.
Understatement, yeah.
Moving on. Google is showing less results with FAQ markup, well, actually with any markup. Reach results, according to our SERP feature tracker, are down about 25% on desktop and 15% on mobile.
Yeah. Oh, I love how you say mobile. I always like that. Interesting to see how, like, okay, so that's like been like some hot news. Okay, and you can check out the data on our SERP feature tracker. We'll throw that into the show notes. Whenever these things happen, you should just check it again a week later, because it's very often like Google will change course again. So just because they're your FAQ markup is down and out now doesn't mean that it always will be, and even in the short term. So definitely keep checking. I'm not trying to like tell you to go to our page and just use our tool. I literally mean like this. These things don't always last very long, so keep on top of it and check it out.
Right.
I'm not trying to be spammy.
Lastly, Mordy, this is the last one. Lastly.
Okay, now I should pay attention when you say that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Google has updated its help doc on Discover. A few key points. Google looks at the overall EAT of the site when choosing articles.
Bum 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 bum.
Bum, 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 bum. Second point, titles that summarize but don't manipulate do well in Discover. And third and last point, high quality images without your site's logo in them will also help.
Right. So that's all good stuff. I will talk about the EAT element of this in a deep thought, part of the bonus coverage of the InSearch SEO podcast. So look for that on our Twitter page, which I forgot to plug before. Forgot to plug that. Nuts. Check out our Twitter page at InSearch_SEO. Sign up for our newsletter. Okay. Thank you for the news up here. Really appreciated that. You did a great job as usual. I can't say enough good things about you. So I won't say anything.
Wow, that's a first.
Yeah. Okay, that leaves us with our fun SEO send-off question. So, Sapir, you had two suggestions, which we previously did. Both of those.
Did we?
Yes, we did. I don't blame you. It's hard to remember. I think we've actually done a repeat on this show and no one caught it. And that's fine. I didn't catch it. You didn't catch it. No big deal. Worked out well. Okay, but I came up with one.
That's why it's a lazy question.
No, it was a good question. I think it's a good question. It's what kind of shoes does Google wear?
Yeah, lousy question.
Lousy question. Wow. Can you feel the love?
Okay, let me answer your lousy question, okay, with a lousy answer.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say heels.
Heels. Okay.
Heels, yeah.
Why? Like what kind of heels? Like stilettos?
Because just I don't know.
Just
Sandals
heels.
with heels.
Sandals with heels. Very specific.
Google would like to show those legs. You know what I mean?
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I'm not really sure how to take that. But good answer. I was gonna say.
Yeah.
For those of you who remember the early '90s, the pumps with the light up in the back. Because Google thinks that they're cool, but they're not really so cool, which is fine. I'm not saying Google should be cool. But you ever see that,
But then Crocs would have been a better answer.
Yeah, because again, you don't... I said early 90s, I know I lost you. No,
I know those
the pumps,
those shoes.
The light up.
I know those shoes.
Because all the cool kids, or all the people who thought they were cool had them, but they weren't really cool. I never thought they were cool. Maybe I'm not cool. I'm definitely not cool.
You're not cool.
Yeah, but they weren't cool back then either. Like you were saying, Google, for their products, like I don't know, like the phone, right? Or the computer. They have these like awesome, really cool commercials. They're so cool, but they're not cool. Come on, it's Google, which is fine. You don't have to be cool.
Cool. What do you consider
Bob Dylan
cool?
is cool. Jim Morrison is cool.
Okay.
People you don't never heard of are cool. And that'll do it for this edition of the InSearch SEO podcast. Check it out again next Tuesday for an all-new episode of the InSearch SEO podcast where Mark Beelan will be joining us. So check that out. It's been In Search because we're all in search of something. Thank you so much and toodle-toodaloo.